It is story time with Shahna, and these are some juicy stories, and I learned so much from these. And every time I've told these stories, people have been so inspired, and I wanted to share them here on the podcast, here on YouTube, wherever you're watching or listening. And I've also done a series over on Instagram, a 3-part series with the written out story, as much as I could fit in 3 posts. Obviously, there's so much I could say about this, which is why I am recording a video and podcast about it, because there is so many amazing lessons within this, and there's also a lot of inspiration to be gained from it. So I hope that hearing these stories really supports you on your body love journey, because this is ultimately the underlying theme of these episodes, or this episode. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the times I stood naked in front of a room full of people. So we're going to have to go back to March. These happened back in March. It is now August. I've been wanting to share them for all this time, but I'm finally here, finally being vulnerable, open, sharing this. So we made it. So back in March, there was this event run by Preston and Alexi Panos. They're these incredible American coaches. They flew to Australia from America and were running 2 events. So one was the Bridge Experience and one was Extreme Leadership. They go hand in hand. They build on each other. Bridge is like level 1 and Extreme Leadership is like level 2. I signed up for Bridge because I had something on the weekend of Extreme Leadership, and I was so excited for it. I booked my flights to Queensland for it because that's where they were holding it. I'm from Melbourne, so I flew up to Queensland for it. And the 2 days there were phenomenal. I learned so much. I stretched myself so much. They were big days, like big in terms of the length, but also in terms of what we did, what we went through, what we learned, but also the activities. Like, it was huge. My nervous system was so activated, but it was so rewarding because I learned so much about myself and how I show up, and just gained some really valuable and honest feedback. And yeah, I could do episodes about that event and all of the things that I learned about that event, but that's not what I'm here to share. I'm here to share particular experiences around the times that I stood naked in front of a room full of people. So one thing I knew about Bridge and Extreme is that in Extreme Leadership, you have the opportunity to get naked in front of a group of people, and it's like a really healing exercise, and like there's reason behind it. You're not just getting naked for the sake of getting naked. It's to really be seen ultimately. And it's also to share something that you've been hiding, or share some form of truth. And I had heard about this story because Ryan had been to Extreme Leadership and Bridge years earlier. And I had remembered him talking about different things he'd had to do at these events. And that was one particular one that stood in my mind, because I was like, wow, that would be so scary, having to stand in front of a room full of people naked, and then share something that you hold shame around, or that you're hiding, or some piece of truth that you hadn't shared with others. And yeah, it terrified me. So I had only booked in for Bridge because that's the only one I could go to, or I thought I could go to. And I knew that that was happening in Extreme. And from what I got out of the 2 days at Bridge, I was like, wow, I wish I could go to Extreme Leadership. And I was like really sad that I couldn't, and really felt like I needed to be there as well. But at that time, I was like, I've got something on that weekend. I can't get out of it, or I thought I couldn't get out of it. And these are these stories and the limitations we place upon ourselves, right? I didn't have the courage to have the difficult conversation that might let people down so that I could get to Extreme Leadership. But that's also another story. So anyway, I went to Bridge, got so much out of it, and was like, damn, I wish I was going to Extreme. How can I like replicate a bit of what I know about Extreme in my day-to-day life? Because I want to keep this beautiful momentum. I want to keep growing. I want to like stop hiding myself. I want to allow myself to be seen, continue doing this kind of healing, and really like utilize the learnings and lessons and momentum from the 2 days at Bridge in my day-to-day life. So at the time, I was also doing a container called Eclectica Hub, which is this incredible dance. It's like visionary dance where it's 12 weeks of learning choreography. And you also, every week, you're doing some form of healing work or ritual around different topics. And so Bridge was on the weekend, and I had to fly back on the Monday to get back for my Eclectica class. And funnily enough, at that Eclectica class that week, the topic was body reclamation. So it was all about body love. And there was an activity in that involved nudity. And I was like, this is perfect. This is like, I get to do some of what I would have been doing if I was able to go to Extreme Leadership this weekend. So I did this activity. It was a really beautiful activity. We wrote a letter to our body saying what we loved about it, apologizing to it. Like, it was this beautiful letter we wrote to our body. And then we broke off into smaller groups where we had the opportunity to stand naked, or as naked as we felt comfortable getting. So some people did it in their undies, some people did it completely naked, some people did it clothed, whatever they wanted to do. It was in little groups of 4. So there were the 3 other people watching as you stood naked or kneeled naked in front of the mirror, reading this letter to your body. It was so healing. It was really, really beautiful. And yeah, I was like, cool, I'm getting to be seen. I'm getting to do this really vulnerable thing in front of others. I'm doing this body healing work for myself as well. It wasn't even about like the nudity and having to be seen, but that was just adding that extra layer of healing, that being seen in that nudity and that extra layer of vulnerability. And because I knew I couldn't go to extreme, or I thought I couldn't go to extreme, I was like, how can I get the most out of this one experience, which was already so powerful in itself. But I really felt called to share in front of the whole group. So once we were done in our little groups, reading our letters, taking that in turns, we were told to put our clothes back on and then come back to the circle. And before I put my clothes back on, I went over to the instructor, Demi, one of the facilitators, and I asked her if I would be able to share something to the whole group before I put my clothes back on. And she was so amazing about it. She's like, thank you for asking. Absolutely. Yeah. Sit here on my sheepskin, like up the front of the room, like anything you need, like go for it. I'm here for it, here to support. So really grateful for that opportunity. It was a really beautiful opportunity. And it was also really terrifying because now I had 20 plus other women around me, beautiful sisters that I journeyed through this container with, and they were all clothed again. And I was kneeling in front of them all naked. I think I had my undies on, so like a thong on, and that was it. So boobs out, most of my body out, just not my pussy ultimately. I should probably put a little like explicit warning on this particular episode. So I was kneeling there and I wanted the opportunity to be able to share some of what I was holding. So for those of you that have been following me, for those of you that know my story, I have these 2 scars on my tummy from when I got some moles removed. And it has taken me such a long time to accept and love these scars. And I'm so grateful to say that I have come so far, particularly in the last year. And I am at a point where I don't hide them anymore, where I really have learned to love them. And yeah, I can show them and I feel so much more comfortable and confident in my skin because of this healing work I've done. Whereas 1 year ago, literally July last year, so just over a year ago, I was at an event and one of the things that I shared that I held so much shame around was my scars, but I didn't even show anyone my scars. I just said it and I burst out crying because that's how much charge I had around them and how much emotion I was holding around my scars and how much I disliked them and how much I wanted to change them and how much I just couldn't accept them or accept my body with them. So been on a huge, huge healing journey. And from that point in July where I started to do this work to love and accept them to this story I'm telling that happened in March, I had already done so much work to the point where I had shared my scars on socials, which was a huge thing for me. That was really vulnerable, brought up a lot of emotion, a lot of resistance to it. It took me ages to actually share them. But then I shared a reel showing my scars and sharing my story around them and like the shame I held around them. And just like, that was so liberating in itself. And I did some other things like that to really build up that love and acceptance for my scars. But still, when it came to me sitting in front of a room full of other women and sharing my scars, even though the room was semi-dark and even though it was like the most loving and accepting room and non-judgmental space, I still felt so insecure and I still felt so vulnerable. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. So I was there naked, kneeling, and I shared with them, I was like, these are my scars. I hold a lot of shame around my scars. And for so long, I've hid them and I haven't loved them. And I feel a lot of shame that I don't love them. I feel a lot of shame that I try to encourage others to really feel more confident in their skin and love their bodies as they are. And I still can't fully love my body as it is because I don't love my scars, or I'm really struggling to love my scars. And I shared that vulnerably at the time I was crying. And like, even me being able to share this now on a podcast episode and a YouTube video where I'm being recorded and being able to say this in the past, when I still hadn't healed all of that, and when I still had so much shame and sadness and regret and guilt around my scars, I would be crying. So even this, me being able to share this now here with you, is huge, because it shows all of this healing I've done and all of the emotion around it I've released and all of the ways that I have come to love and accept my scars. So I'm so proud of myself for that. But yeah, I was in front of this room sharing that vulnerability, sharing all of that. And I also shared the guilt that I felt. And this is something that had really landed with me that particular night. Something that I came to realize was that I wasn't just feeling shame around like having the scars or feeling like I needed to hide them, or shame around the fact that I didn't love them and I was teaching others to love their body. I also felt really guilty because I realized that I had created them, because by getting those moles removed that were there, I essentially created it, because that's what led to the scar. And I also, so the story with the scars goes, I had these two little moles on my tummy, one like more frontal and one a bit higher up on my rib cage, and I didn't like them. And I wanted to get rid of them. I thought I'd be more beautiful. I thought I'd be sexier. I thought I'd feel better in my body if my scars were gone. So I went and got them removed at the doctor. And the first doctor that I went to, she actually burnt them off, which you're not supposed to do, which I didn't know that at the time. But apparently this was like a really old-fashioned way of how they got rid of moles. So I went to the doctor to get these moles removed, and she burnt them off, and yeah, it was fine after that for a little bit. Like, they just kind of healed. However, they became keloid scars, which actually grow. So the scars weren't just a little like mark, they were actually elevated and discolored. So like a pinky purpley kind of color. And essentially what happened was they kept growing and they started to look a bit weird, particularly the one on the front of my tummy. And I was like, this isn't right. So a couple of years later, I went to another doctor and they're like, they weren't supposed to be burnt off. What doctor did you go see? That's not the right way of doing it. They need to be cut out. And this is why it's growing back. And it looked dodgy. So we wanted to get it removed to get it sent off for testing, to check that it wasn't cancerous, or check that like, yeah, nothing was growing there. So I got the scars removed again, this time cut. But because of the original scar, where the original mole had been removed, more had to be removed. So more skin was removed, and therefore it was a bigger scar this time. And again, the same thing happened where it was keloid and it was growing. And I did have some like steroid injections to try and help with the healing. I actually think that made it worse, to be honest, because there were some other little marks that started growing, like where the injection went in around it. So I had the steroid treatment. I also had some like laser treatment to try and help with the scarring. This was like a skin specialist I saw, like a dermatologist that was like specializing in this kind of stuff. So she was kind of guiding me and supporting me through that. But I had all this kind of extra stuff to try and prevent it from scarring, because I was scared of the scarring because of what happened the first time. Anyway, ended up way worse the second time, and the scars continued to grow. And that's the story of the scars ultimately. So when I shared in front of that group at Eclectica, I realized that by me wanting to get rid of those moles and wanting to change my body, because I thought that by changing my body, I would love it more, or I'd feel better in my skin and I'd love myself more, therefore. And by doing that, I actually had created the scars, which led me to like my body even less. So I realized I'd actually created this problem for myself. If I had have just loved my body with the moles, then I wouldn't have had the scars. So that was a really big realization for me. And that was really hard to realize too. It's like, oh, wow, this is kind of my fault for doing the surgery to remove the moles, or the first time the burning, not even a surgery. And yeah, like I can't even like it's my own fault ultimately. So that guilt of doing that to myself and putting myself through that, but then also the anger that I realized I was holding towards people not like showing me that I could love my body exactly as it was, and people not trying to stop me when I wanted to remove those moles that were not cancerous or not dangerous at all. And my anger at that original doctor for doing it the wrong way, which led down that path of having to do the second surgery, therefore the bigger scars. So there was just a lot of shame, guilt, and anger I was carrying. And so when I was sharing in front of this group, all of this emotion was there and present, and I was crying and I was letting it out, and it felt so liberating, but it also felt so terrifying because being so vulnerable is really freaking scary. It's so healing, but I also acknowledge that it is really scary. And I've obviously done so much work to really heal my relationship with my emotions and be able to feel my emotions, but there is still a part of me that gets even more scared at feeling emotions in front of other people. It's like that inbuilt fear of rejection, or what are people going to think of me, the fear of judgment, all of that. And I'm slowly deconditioning myself from that. And I've come so far in that as well. But back in March at that time, it was still very new to me to be showing emotion in front of other people and sharing such vulnerabilities in front of other people, especially people that I didn't know that well yet. Like we'd been in Eclectica for 3 or 4 weeks at that time. So it was still just getting to know everyone in that room and feel comfortable with them. And yeah, so like I said, such a safe space. And now they're all like sisters to me and I love them all so much, but it just felt so scary in the moment. And so that was the original story of me getting naked in front of a room full of people, and also sharing shame, guilt, anger with them and giving voice to that and allowing myself to move through and process some of that. So that was huge. That was in itself such a valuable experience and such a gift, and to be so beautifully received by the Eclectica sisters and so like, yeah, just unconditionally loved. I'm so, so grateful for all of them and for that experience. And so anyway, to continue the story, what actually ended up happening was I did that and I was like, wow, like I was so proud of myself. I was like, that was so brave. I did that because of what I had done at Bridge and like the courage that had given me. And yeah, I was like, far out. I still really want to go to Extreme Leadership. I really want to get back to Queensland this weekend. But I had something on with my family and I was like, the good girl in me, the people pleaser within me was like, no, I can't disturb the peace. I can't ask to cancel our plans because everyone's taken this weekend off and we're all going away together. And it's just, I can't do that to everyone. Like, just for me to do something I want to do, I can't stuff up. And I'm saying that in quotation marks for anyone listening to the podcast that can't see the video. I don't want to like stuff up everyone else's plans, or I don't want to be like that burden or cause everyone to have to change their plans just because something that I really feel like I need to do. So I really got to witness that good girl and that people pleaser. And I was like, far out. That just shows even more why I need to be at this next event, because this is kind of all the stuff we were working on, all of this healing work and the embodiment work and getting rid of those kinds of identities and really stepping into our power and being able to ask for what we desire. That was a huge learning from a Bridge experience, like literally just being able to ask for what we want, which we don't often do. Like when you think about it, how often do you actually ask for what you want in life from other people, from life in general, from your boss? How often do you actually ask? So anyway, at that time, I was still really battling with that. I was like, oh, I just really feel like I need to go. It's a few days away by this point. I was like, I'm just going to talk to my mom. I'm going to talk to mom. I'm going to talk to dad. I'm going to talk to my brother. I'm going to talk to his girlfriend. And I went through it and I talked to everybody. And I told them that this was really important to me. And I asked them that if I was able to arrange with the Airbnb to shift the weekend to another weekend, would it be okay if we postponed and if I went to Queensland to go to this event and we all did our family getaway together a different weekend? And they were all really good about it. They understood that it was really important for me. And I just shared from the heart how important it was for me and how much I really felt like it meant to me. I had beautiful experiences with them all, conversations with them all, and they were all super supportive. I emailed the Airbnb lady and she was so good about it. She's like, yep, no worries. I found another date that worked for everyone as well. So I was like, cool. Had to postpone it a few months to May, but I found a weekend where all of us were free again. And the Airbnb lady was like, yep, totally fine. I'll swap that over for you. We actually ended up getting money back for the accommodation, which was awesome because I ended up saving us money. So that like helped me feel better about having to change everything around. But that lesson of like asking for what I want and having what I felt was a difficult conversation was also a huge lesson in itself. But that essentially was able to get me to extreme leadership and get me to this 3-day event where I knew one of those activities was going to be involving nudity. So I got back to Queensland. I went to Extreme Leadership. It's the night of the nudity activity. And basically what we did was we stood in a dim room in like a U shape, like a horseshoe shape. And everyone got down to whatever they felt comfortable with or what stretched them, but still was within their boundaries. So you had the opportunity to get fully naked or just down to your underwear. And I got fully naked, and then what we got to do was 5 at a time. We went to the front of the room and we had to share some form of truth. So the activity was called the Naked Truth. And you had to share something that you had been hiding or something that you held shame around or just something that felt like really vulnerable, because it kind of added to the vulnerability, right, of being naked in front of a room full of people. And then you're also sharing some piece of truth or something you hold shame around. It's like so healing to do. So we did that. And I went up first. Like I was like, yeah, I'm going to be in the first 5 people. I'm good. I've kind of done this before. This was a much bigger room, and this was mostly strangers as well. So this was over 60 people, probably about 80, including all of the support coaches and staff. And yeah, walked to the front of the room, was part of that first 5. We all had a turn to say that thing that we were hiding or that piece of truth. And I shared about my scars. I said, the thing that I've been hiding is my scars. And then, yeah, everyone went, the whole room went. And once everyone was finished, they put the music on. We were dancing around. We felt so liberated, so free. It was like such a healing activity. It was really, really beautiful. And then we all got dressed, lights went back on, and we went and we were sitting, and Preston and Alexi gave us the opportunity to share our experience. And I will also say that this activity was optional. So those that didn't want to do it didn't have to do it. The event was like super trauma informed and really well led in the way they did it. It was really, really cool. Anyway, so lights are back on. They're asking us to share our experience. And I felt like I had to get up and get naked in front of the room again, but in the light, because I felt like the experience earlier had been super liberating, but I still noticed how scared I felt in my body at the idea of doing it with the lights on and when it was only me at the front of the room. And because it scared me so much, I knew it was an edge that I had to lean into, right? Often these things we fear, the caves we fear to enter hold the treasures we seek. And that was one of these examples. I was like, I really just feel like I need to get up there and I need to share, but I also need to get naked again. And it sounds crazy. And I kept like overthinking it, and I was like talking myself out of it. And I was like, no, this is something that I feel like would be so healing for me, even though it absolutely terrifies me. And even though the idea of it, I was shaking just thinking about it. So anyway, I volunteered myself to share my experience. Little did they know I was about to get naked again. And I went up to the front of the room and I shared, and I was like, that was so liberating. And I'm so grateful for that activity. I really got a lot out of it, but I'm also noticing how scared I would be to do it right now in front of all of you with the lights on. So I'm actually going to do it again. I'm going to get naked right now, and I'm going to show you all my scars in the light, because Preston and Alexi, you guys were actually the ones that taught me that shame heals in the light. Other people I've since heard it from language it in different ways. So it's like shame heals in safe spaces, or shame heals when you're able to share it safely, like all those kinds of things. But ultimately I was like, I'm going to take this literal and be like, shame heals in the light. So lights are back on, and I have this opportunity to get naked again and show everyone my scars. And so this time I didn't get fully naked. I was just in my underwear. So just in my thong again, basically naked. And I just said, so here are my scars in the light. And thank you for all witnessing me. I can't remember exactly what I said in that moment. I was so activated. I was trembling, like my whole body was shaking. I felt like I was going to die, even though I knew I wasn't at any immediate risk of danger. I honestly just felt so terrified. And then Preston asked me, he's like, and what do you love about your scars? And I was like, I just burst into tears, and I was like, No one's ever asked me that. And I've never thought about that. And I just kind of like stood there crying and I was like, oh, wow, I don't know. And then I thought of an answer. I think I said something like, I love that they're a remembrance that my body has the ability to heal. And I'm so grateful for that. And then that perspective in itself, I was like, oh, wow, I have these scars because my body can heal. How lucky am I? So that was really beautiful. And that kind of like wrapped up that experience. And I put my clothes back on and I went and sat down and I was still trembling when I was sitting there. I was like, what have I done? And then my ego jumped in and it's like, oh my God, everyone's judging you. Everyone's going to think like, how dare you take up that space and like do that in front of the whole room and take up their time, and just all of those stories that the ego says, and all of those kind of like good girl stories came back up, right? And it was just such a liberating thing. And like once I calmed down, once I stopped shaking, once I was able to like re-regulate and just sit with that and breathe and like calm myself down, I am able to, like I was able to, and now even now I'm able to look back and reflect on how healing all of those experiences were, all three of them, because technically it's three separate occasions where I was naked in front of a room full of people. And they were so liberating, so liberating. And when we hold on to this emotional baggage, or we hold on to the shame or the guilt or the anger or whatever it may be, it's exhausting. And we don't even realize it's exhausting. We don't even realize it's there, but our body does keep score. Our body holds on to all of this emotion that we don't deal with. And it's weighing us down. And for me, it was really contributing to how I was hiding myself from the world. Like, literally, I was hiding my body because even at the beach, I wouldn't wear a bikini because I didn't want to show my scars. I would wear a one piece. And like if I was wearing a top that was a little bit shorter, that if I put my arms up, you could see my scars, then I'd feel paranoid that, oh, I have to keep my arms down. I can't move in particular ways because people might see my scars. And it's so exhausting to have to live this way. It was like a cage that I had built myself. And the more healing I did on that, and those three experiences were huge for helping me transmute the shame and move through that emotion that I was holding around it, and help me be able to show my scars and love my scars and accept my scars, to now, like those plus the other work I've done since, is like I can now go to the beach and wear a bikini. I bought a bikini again for the first time in March after those events, and I wore it in Noosa and I loved it. I was rocking that black bikini, and it's just so freeing. And like, I've noticed the difference it's made in my own confidence. The more confident I feel in my body and within my own skin, it's also had that deeper effect of like, I feel more confident in myself, because our body is a huge part of us, right? Our body is what we go through life with. It's like our home. And the more that we can learn to love it, the more we can really like love ourselves and deepen that relationship with ourselves. And these are linked. Our relationship to our body is linked to our relationship to ourselves. So in order to love our body, we also need to learn to love ourselves. And this is what I teach in Radiance, because everything comes back to our relationship with ourselves. When we can really learn to love ourselves and really learn to love our body, which is a byproduct of loving ourselves, but there's like some nuances and it's worth focusing on both, because when we can love ourselves and then love our body, that's when we become even more magnetic, even more confident, even more authentic, and we become even more free, because we're letting go of all of that emotional baggage, or we're letting go of the idea that we need to look a different way. So that is essentially my stories of the times I stood naked in front of rooms full of people and cried every time, except the second one where I was like in the U-shaped circle and there were 5 of us up there and it was semi-dark. That one I don't think I cried, but the other 2 I did cry. And I love that I cried as well, because it was so much more healing being witnessed in that emotion, especially like I mentioned earlier, like that's a part of me that I'm really healing and working on, is like being okay with being seen in my emotion in front of other people. And yeah, experiences like this make it easier and easier every time. Still, obviously, can be really activating and difficult and all of that. But the more we lean in and the more we are comfortable in our own emotions, and therefore we become more comfortable in our emotions in front of other people, because we're loving ourselves through whatever we're going through. We're loving ourselves in our mess. And therefore we're not as afraid of what other people are going to think of us in our mess, right? So I hope you have learned a lot from this. Actually, no, I want to go through the lessons. I haven't gone through the lessons yet. There have been many lessons speckled through, but I kind of want to like touch on a few more of those lessons that I got from these experiences. So one of them, a huge one, was just how liberating it is to really process this and to be seen in the vulnerability and allow yourself to be seen and vulnerable and naked in front of other people was so healing in itself. It's like you cannot hide when you're naked. You're just like exposed to everybody. And there's so much beauty in that because it's like, yeah, you can't hide. Why do we feel the need to hide? Why can't we show all of us? And I'm not saying we should be walking around naked. I'm saying it's almost like a metaphor. It's like hiding our bodies in these kind of settings, or not feeling comfortable showing ourselves naked is like a metaphor for us not being comfortable showing like the depths of us internally, like who we are as a person, the different parts of us. So I really found there was so much healing and liberation in that simple act of being naked in front of other people and being accepted and witnessed. That was really powerful. I also, what else did I learn? I wrote down some lessons because I don't want to miss any. I also learned how powerful and healing it is for other people to see you in your vulnerability and in your healing. And for example, when I was sharing that shame and that guilt and that anger and just being seen in the tears, in all of it, and other people who could relate being like, wow, yeah, actually there's a part of my body I don't love either. Or yeah, actually, I've got a scar as well. And thank you so much for sharing. And this is my scar. And I've really struggled to love my own scar, or I had my own journey to loving my scar. And just like the beauty in that, the connection. And this is one of the most beautiful things about vulnerability and intimacy. Like that is getting to know someone at a deeper level, right? Vulnerability is so intimate. It's not surface level. It's like you're so exposed, and it doesn't have to be through nudity. It can be through sharing something that's really meaningful to you or really on your heart, or something that's upsetting to you. And there's so much strength in vulnerability, and it's able to bring us like closer together, be more connected, because when we're sharing really deep, vulnerable stuff, we're also getting to see that person at that deeper level, and therefore feeling more connected to them and their journey and what they're going through. So that in itself was so beautiful. So yeah, I saw the power in being that lighthouse, being that example and leading by example and showing others what's possible for them too, or helping others heal simply through me doing the healing work. So that was another lesson. I also, one of the lessons I got was through that anger that I felt towards people not teaching me to love my body as it was, it really like reignited that passion within me to be out there doing this work and help other people love their body exactly as it is, scars and all, lumps and bumps and all, whatever it is, wrinkles and all. Like our body is so phenomenal, and the more we can learn to love it and treat it like a temple, it's such a gift. Like we need our body working with us to really thrive, right? Like our body does so much for us, and we so often take that for granted because we want to change something about it. Like I was so fixated on my scars that I forgot about all of the incredible things that my body is doing for me, let alone the fact that I'm only able to be here having this human experience because of my body and because of its ability to heal and create scar tissue, right? So it's just mind-blowing. And yeah, it reignited that passion, and it showed me that this work I am doing is so important and so needed and so valuable, and that I get to be that person for others. So rather than other people being like, oh, I wish I knew that it was okay to love my body, or I wish someone taught me how to love my body, so that I didn't do this or feel this way or try to change it and then also end up in a situation where they regretted it, I get to be that person that helps prevent that and helps them love their body and helps them really come to feel at peace in their body and comfortable in their skin, and therefore more confident in their body and confident in life. So that's a real gift. So that really showed the importance of this work. And I also saw the importance of this work by witnessing the other people share, because in both of those settings, the Eclectica and at Extreme Leadership, a lot of the other people that shared, most of it came back to body shame, not loving their body how it was, wanting to change a part of themselves or change something they'd done. Like, it all came back to that. And I was like, holy moly, this work is so needed. Like, what I'm doing through Radiance and helping people heal their relationship to themselves and therefore heal their relationship to their body and to food is so needed, because so many people are suffering with things that can be supported with the tools that I teach in Radiance. So it really, really showed me the importance of that. And it showed me that by me not putting my offers out there, or me not talking about them, or not promoting them, or not sharing them, or not running them, that I'm actually doing people a disservice, and I'm robbing people of that potential opportunity to do that healing work that has been so life-changing for me and gets to be life-changing for them as well. So that was huge insight in itself. What else did I learn? I also learned one other lesson, is that I learned often no one is judging us as harshly as we are judging ourselves. And I could go on a whole spiel about judgment and how what we judge in others is actually just what we're judging within ourselves, or what we're not allowing ourselves to do. So therefore, if anyone is judging us, it's actually just a projection of their own internal judgment. So other people's judgment just isn't valid. Ultimately, it doesn't mean anything about us. But I learned that, yeah, other people often aren't judging us in the way that we're judging ourselves. So I was judging my scars and being like, oh, they're so ugly, I really don't like them. Like, and I was so fixated on them. I couldn't see the rest of my beautiful body, because like, that's all I could see. I was just so focused on these damn scars and why can't they go away, and all these stories that I was like repeating in my mind, or like all this regret, all this guilt, all this shame. And standing naked in front of those other people afterwards, the response I received and what people came up to me and were saying, like one girl, for example, was so beautiful. She came up and she's like, I know that when you look in the mirror, you probably only see your scars. That's probably all you can see. It probably just like takes up so much of that mental space. And that's probably what you notice when you look in the mirror. But I barely even noticed your scars. All I saw was you in all your beauty, all your glory, like your beautiful body. And just like, you were like glowing, you were radiating. And she said that. And I was like, wow, here I am so fixated on these scars. And by doing that, I'm kind of like shielding that like beauty and that the way that inner glow. So that in itself, I was like, wow, okay, other people aren't perceiving that. Because one of the reasons that I wasn't wearing a bikini at the beach, or I wasn't wearing crop tops on my exercise workouts, like whatever, was because I was like, oh, I think my scars are really ugly, so other people are going to judge me for them. They're going to think they're really ugly. And then what if they don't like me because I have these hideous scars? What I used to think at the time. Like now I even just calling them hideous now, I'm like, no, I don't mean that. Like, they're not hideous. They're beautiful in their own way. They're unique. They're special. So I'm using this languaging based on what I used to think and how I used to perceive them. But that's literally how I used to feel. And it was like, yes, I was judging them and I didn't want to show them because I was like, I don't want to show these to the world. But I was also afraid of showing them because I was afraid of that judgment and afraid of what other people would think. And a lot of other people that saw my scars were like, no, like they're beautiful, or you don't even notice them, or whatever they said. So other people aren't always judging us the way we think they are, or yeah, it's all just kind of like that inner insecurity that we have to deal with. Because even if other people are judging my scars now that I'm at the beach wearing a bikini, or now that I'm wearing a crop top on my workouts, that doesn't mean anything, right? Like, that doesn't change anything. It doesn't mean I'm less worthy as a person because I have these scars, or doesn't mean I'm any less beautiful, or I have to be any less confident or any less sexy. And this is one of the things when it comes to us wanting to change our body. And like me, for example, when I wanted to get rid of those moles, I did that because I thought I would feel sexier. I thought I would feel more confident in my skin. I thought I would feel more comfortable, like in a bikini or in underwear or naked even, because I was like, well, I don't like my body with my scars. So if the scars are gone, then I'll feel better within myself. I'll feel better within my body. And this goes for all of our goals. It's not actually the thing we think we want, right? So it wasn't actually my scars being gone that I wanted. I thought that's what I wanted. What I wanted was to feel more confident, to feel sexier, to love my body. That's what I wanted at the root. I'm sure there's more there, but do you see what I'm getting at? It wasn't actually my scars being gone that I wanted or needed. It was literally the internal feeling that I thought not having these scars would bring me, or not having those moles at the time, what I was trying to get removed. That's what I was seeking. And when we realize that what we're seeking, we don't need to change anything externally. And even if we change something externally, doesn't mean it's going to give us the internal feeling. So we can start from within. And then when we start from within, and when we cultivate these feelings within ourselves without changing anything external, our external reality changes anyway, because our inner reality reflects our external reality. So when we want to change something, it's so important to come back inside to do the inner work, because that's what's going to change the outside, right? And this goes for our bodies, it goes for our businesses, careers, it goes for our relationships, like everything. It always starts from within. So that's essentially what I have to share about my experiences standing naked in front of people and what I learned. And I learned so much, as you can see. This episode's been longer than I expected it to be, but I hope you've gained so much value from it. If you can relate to any of this, or if you really would love someone to help guide you towards loving yourself and loving your body exactly as it is, then I encourage you to look into my program Radiance. I would absolutely love to be able to support you on this journey and help you feel the way I feel now on the other side of all this, with the liberation that comes from that, the freedom that comes from that, the confidence that comes from that, the authenticity that comes from that. Honestly, healing our relationship to our body ripples into all other areas of our life, because it comes down to healing our relationship with ourselves. And the more that we build this self-love, the more that we build this body love, the more that everything else in our external reality changes. And I love sharing this. I'm so passionate about sharing this. And I now understand the importance of having this work out there and putting it out there and offering it to those that it feels aligned. So if this does feel aligned to you, you can learn more. I'll put a link in the show notes or the YouTube notes, depending where you're watching or listening. And you can check out my program Radiance. I run a couple of rounds a year, so keep an eye out for the next dates, but you can email me if you're interested and we'll get you in the next round and help you learn to love yourself and your body. And it also, when we heal our relationship to ourselves and our body, it also helps to heal our relationship to food and develop that food freedom. So yeah, I'm so passionate about this work. And if it's something that interests you, you know where to find the links. It's also on my website, but I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, for listening, for watching, wherever you are. I appreciate you. And I really hope that you feel inspired from hearing these stories and these lessons, and that it's encouraging you to love your body more and more, because our bodies are such a gift. And however you look, however you feel, know that you can come to a place where you absolutely love and adore your body, and it is one of the best feelings. So thank you again for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in a future episode.